I thought you were doing the shoey. It's just you.
Oh, it is just Catherine. You're right.
Because we already picked other drivers to do shoeys for, and we wouldn't let her pick the same ones that we did.
Okay, when she was texting us this weekend that we had to do shoeys, I totally thought it was the whole group.
Well, she just wanted us to suffer with her, but don't worry, I checked.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Grid Gals. This is episode number 30, and we are recapping the Japanese Grand Prix, which was one heck of a race. Quite the weekend we had in Suzuka. Just a bunch of elephants in the room to address, I think. So maybe we should just jump right in and start with the biggest one, which is there was potential in this race for Max to win the world championship. And apparently he did. I'm still a little confused on how that happened, but...
Call it being 3 in the morning. Oh my God, for our listeners, Catherine is sitting across the table, and she came decked out in freaking Red Bull swag.
It only felt right, ladies.
She just pulled out her fucking flag and put it on her shoulders.
When did you even get that? I've never seen that before.
Compliments of David.
Oh, okay. Well,
I don't know if it was just the fact that we ended watching the race at like 3:20 at a bar or what, but like I totally missed that he like won. I didn't even know that was an option unless he won both race and the fastest lap there.
Yeah, so it was like a weird win. And we did go to bed before like I think they officially confirmed it, because for our listeners, we were watching at an F1 bar that we normally watch some of the races at, and since all the delays, it was 3 in the morning? The bar was like shutting down.
Yeah, they didn't restart. The race was supposed to start at midnight. They didn't restart the race until like 2:15 in the morning. And I think the race was then scheduled to end at like 3:05 or something. The bar closed at 3. I mean, they stayed open like a couple extra minutes. But yeah. It was a late night. I was exhausted, and clearly I missed.
Well, because we got up
the win
and left before they were talking on the podium. So like after the race interviews were being completed, Max went, they're like, congratulations on the win, like, sorry you didn't get the world championship here, like your time will be in Austin. And at that time they were investigating Leclerc and Perez because Leclerc went off track at like the last chicane of the last lap.
Oh yeah.
And gained an advantage. And so after Max was interviewed, Checo comes up to do his interview, and I guess they get notified that Leclerc got a 5-second time penalty. And so that put him in third, which with how the points played out, gave Max the win.
That's how, because Leclerc got a penalty,
yeah,
Max had enough of a difference to officially win.
Yes. And so then they called Max back over, and they're like, now you're world champion. And it was kind of like an anticlimactic win.
Yeah.
So it was like, hey, you got it because like Leclerc got a penalty and you've already done your post-race. But
what a weird way to win.
It was weird. And also like, so I watched like the last 5 minutes now back, and they had Max in the cool down room, like go to like a special room, and there was like a throne in there.
What?
It was so bizarre. And even he was like kind of freaked out by it. And he was like, I'm kind of lonely in here. Because it was like literally just like a door off of the normal cool down room. So the other two guys were like in the cool down room where he was to begin with. And then they opened this other door that was like specifically just for him. And he ended up like getting up and like leaving. Because he's like, they took a couple photos and then he's like, this is too odd. I'm going to go.
That is very bizarre. Oh my God.
So the whole thing was just chaotic, which all in all was Suzuka, I feel like. But the championship was pretty anticlimactic the way it ended.
Well, and that's not the only big Red Bull news that's come out.
Oh, yeah.
We brought it up on the episode last week, but Red Bull was one of the teams being investigated for going over the 2021 cost cap. And it just came out today that they did, or the FIA has found them to be in violation of the budget cap.
Yeah, which I think no one was surprised about, except for apparently Christian Horner. But yeah, it was a minor breach. Aston Martin also went over.
Which, that one was surprising.
Yeah, that one, I don't know where that money went.
I figured I would have hoped they would have had better results at this point if they...
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're gonna breach the cost cap, at least win.
Yeah.
You know, which Red Bull did.
Like a race.
Well, hey, I wonder, I mean, I know we talked about the penalties for breaking the cost cap. Are they going to retroactively apply penalties to the 2021 season? Because Max just barely won. It's very different than this year where he's running away with it.
Can you imagine?
Do you think he's going to have to give back his first world championship?
So that's what everyone's saying could happen. And remember when we went through all the penalties, there are like 6 different categories of penalties for a minor breach. So, but it is, one of them is taking away world championship points. But that would be insane. And also, I feel like it should apply to Red Bull as a team and not specifically one driver. Because, like, that's like a team thing. Unless they can prove it was, like, for Max's car.
Which, it obviously would have... That's hard, because, like...
Well, that one's also hard because, okay, this year, he's so clearly running away with it.
Yeah.
He's already won it. I mean, again, weird way to win it, I guess, this week. But it's a different story. Last year, they entered Abu Dhabi exactly tied.
Yeah.
So if there was a difference in points... I mean, and granted, even the win in Abu Dhabi, it was a little sketchy, okay? You know, whether you agree or disagree with it, it wasn't like a clear win like this year. Mm-hmm. You know, where it's undeniable. And so you start to add retroactive penalties. Oh, it's spicy.
Yeah. I feel like the FIA needs to come out firm about it, but still like some sort of fair. Like I feel like that would be really, really dramatic, but I mean, I am a Red Bull person, so.
I think I agree with your point about this season being there's so much of a gap between him and Leclerc that even if they give a ton of retroactive penalties, I still think Max will comfortably win this season. But the drama, oh my gosh, it's hard to separate and say, like, I get that it wasn't necessarily Max's call potentially to exceed the budget cap, but it is in his favor, and there's no arguing in my mind if they're doing upgrades at that point in the season with how neck and neck him and Lewis were, and there really wasn't a big hope that they were going to win the Constructors' Cup last year. They were definitely in the best interest of Max.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no way you can prove that. That you could say, like, they're trying to win the Constructors.
Well, if they took the equal amount of points away from both Checo and Max...
Yeah, then that would be...
It would have a different impact.
Right, that's what
it would
saying.
Cost
like,
Max a
I
title.
don't think that they can do, like, 100% on Max.
Oh, no, I agree. Yeah. Whatever they do, it has to be.
It needs to be a fair, like, Red Bull reprimand, not just, like, the one person that won.
Well, and talk about a weird win. If Hamilton breaks the record for world championships and gets his 8th one through a retroactive penalty to Red Bull, that's a weird win, too.
Yeah.
I almost feel like that's not even satisfying at that point.
No.
I feel like there'll always be like an asterisk or a joke, almost a joke to the fact that he's broken the record.
I feel like Hamilton will feel very vindicated if that happens, but I don't think it will give him the same satisfaction, and he's already said, like, he doesn't want to retire.
Yeah.
And he's actively in contract talks with Mercedes still to figure out what his future looks like, but, I mean, I think he wants to win another one flat out.
Yeah, and I think the most fair in my mind would just be apply it to next year. Be like, okay, since you spent this money this year, when the cost cap decreases next year, which I think it decreases like $5 million each year, you also have to tack on the $2 million that you went over, because that's what I think it was. Like, they said it was less than 2.
I think it would be fair to do a future looking penalty to next season.
But I get wanting to apply it to the year that it actually it should be attributed to. So I don't know what it'll be. It can be a range of things. So I guess that's the next FIA announcement. We'll have to wait and see.
And also, what's going to happen to Aston Martin? Do we even care?
No one even cares. Aston Martin didn't even come out with a statement. They were just like, yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, we did it. And Stroll's like, yeah, of course.
I mean, to be fair, they've been caught cheating in the past, and they're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
They're like, have you ever tried cheating too? They're like, simply, we think you should also cheat.
Yep.
No,
the pink Mercedes, I mean, come on. That was my favorite year, where they're like, I think, who was it? On Lawrence Stroll on like Drive to Survive, he was like, yeah, obviously we copied the best car in the paddock. They're the best car in the paddock. And I was like, you know what? I kind of love that mentality.
Wait, what was it? Why was I seeing on Twitter all about the jokes about exceeding the catering budget?
Okay, I was trying to find it. There apparently, I think that Red Bull's budget submission went public. So I think people are like actually getting to see what they spent on certain things. So I think their catering budget was outrageous. So it probably looks like they're plugging some things in there. Because I saw those two that was like, Red Bull got a Michelin chef to prepare all their catering.
It was like, I don't know if this is a true quote from Christian Horner, but someone was joking like, Max is the hungriest athlete I've ever seen. You wouldn't believe the food this man eats.
Caviar only.
The budget cap has provided a lot of drama that I feel like we kind of needed at the end of the season.
Yeah.
We do have a forensic accountant on the Grid Gals team. I feel like someone needs to go line by line through that budget submission and find where the money went.
Yeah, I mean, it depends who hires you, right? So if the FIA or Red Bull hired me, it would definitely probably skew.
Oh my God.
You would disband your loyalty from Red Bull in the interest of the FIA?
I simply would not accept such a job.
I was gonna say.
Although it has been really funny to hear the drivers' reactions to the cost cap. Because, like, obviously some drivers have strong opinions. Hamilton, obviously.
Yep.
Who claimed to have not thought about 2021 until now when the budget cap was brought up. Of course.
Which is such a him response. Like,
yeah.
It's like when someone brings up your ex.
Yeah.
And they're like,
never thought.
Oh, I haven't thought about them in years.
It totally hasn't been keeping me up every night.
Stalking him on LinkedIn.
Didn't even notice that he's still in the sport. Who would have known?
But he came out in a lot of the press conferences making some accusations, obviously back in Toto and all of that. But I liked when they asked Max, and this is probably why I'm a Max fan, because he's like, I'm just here to drive fast. That's a team problem.
I mean, that's fair. That's what I would say if I was a driver. Like,
yeah,
I don't
mean,
do the
he
books.
doesn't do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But it cracks me up how some will get involved and some won't. Any other drama we have to discuss?
I don't know if this counts as drama, but I did hear some rumblings around the paddock that maybe Seb was starting to regret his decision a little bit to retire. Aww. And I don't know how much of that was just kind of the nostalgia because he loves Suzuka. This is one of his favorite tracks. You know, he straight up came out and said, he's like, I don't know if any team would ever let me do this, but if I could do a one-race contract in the future, and if a driver would agree to step aside, I would absolutely continue to race here.
Yeah.
But I heard kind of more broadly within the F1 community, some people were saying that he's having second thoughts. And, you know, especially I think based on how the season's going and how poorly Aston Martin has been performing, that, you know, this isn't the way he wanted to go out.
Yeah.
And at first he was really confident in his decision to leave and pursue other things and was maybe starting to backtrack a bit. And granted, I don't know how much of that is purely a rumor, how much of that is people just being hopeful he'll stick around in some other way. But, you know, I think his comments about Suzuka definitely helped fuel that. I know.
Here.
I know.
Because he also, like, he doesn't have kids or anything, right?
Yeah, he does.
Does he?
He has kids.
Oh.
Uh-huh. He has 2 or 3, I think.
Completely missed that. I've not been reading my Vettel news. Because, I mean, I feel like if you have a family, that's when you're like, okay, I'm going to go spend some more time with my kids and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that's a part of it. I mean, I think his kids are still young enough that, you know, he definitely wants to spend more time with family and also just pursue other avenues. You know, he's passionate about a lot of other things.
He could pull an Alonso.
Yeah.
Schumacher, Alonso, we've seen a lot of times where really great drivers have retired only to come back a year or 2 or whatever later. So, you know, I mean, I'll obviously keep my fingers crossed. I don't think he'll be back on the grid next year, definitely, but who knows? 2024, maybe.
It's a tough decision. I mean, it takes up a significant period of their life. I'm sure the adrenaline rush, too, of just being in that car and the fans and everything. I mean, I've been watching a lot of celebrity documentaries, And they talk about how there's like nothing to compare to when they played that like one really insane show that they sold out, or like a stadium tour, and they get addicted almost to that rush. So I could see too, being at a track that's significant, that had meaning to him, not wanting to let that go and realizing, oh my God, I'm not going to be experiencing this anymore. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Well, and I think we've seen that with a lot of athletes too. Like professional athletes have a really hard time retiring. I mean, the classic example, Tom Brady, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is really hard to go from such an intense lifestyle to literally a normal life. I don't know.
You're talking about a sport that's out of my realm, so I can't really comment there. Oh, I was just going to say, I don't know if you saw how Vettel finished in Suzuka. Neck and neck with Alonso. Literally got the exact same time. They had to go down to like the tiniest decimal of a second. And I'm honestly not sure who ended up winning out of those two.
I knew they were super close, but yeah, I don't know if I realized it was that close.
Yeah.
I feel like it was a whirlwind at the end. It was hard to see who was winning. And they weren't doing a good job of
Showing other people.
They had like very low visibility to a lot of cars on the track.
Yeah, and I was so tired. I was like, I needed to stand to stay awake, so...
I think the other piece of, not drama per se, but it was about the actual race that I saw a lot of commentary on after the fact, because this is the track where we had the death of Jules back in 2014. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but when they did the first start, Gasly had, I think it was part of a sign that came onto his car, but apparently Suzuka had left a tractor out on the track, and if you were watching the first part of the race, there's very low visibility with the spray and everything, and Gasly came pretty close to it and was freaking out. And I mean, that's exactly how Jules got in his wreck and ended up dying, and he was also a French driver, and was close to Gasly, but apparently there were a lot of people coming out like very disappointed with all of the safety regulations, especially since this is a race that started. Typically when the FIA sees water, they like don't let them start. They made the decision to start and then had obviously an unsafe environment for them to race in with having that tractor on the track, which is...
I was really surprised they started. I mean, it got red flagged after 3 laps and was delayed for 2 hours. But yeah, I mean, just with the absolute chaos in those first couple laps, I was pretty shocked with the FIA's decision to go ahead with the race.
Yeah, the FIA is going to be under a lot of scrutiny for that call, because even like Jules' dad tweeted about it, was really upset. Norris definitely tweeted about it as well, because it was the same track, same conditions that Jules had crashed and subsequently died, and it was the same issue. It was the tractor out because they were moving. I think it was Sainz's car, and it was under a safety car still. And it was like right before, I think it had just been red flagged, and so they're going back to the pits, and Gasly was passing the tractor as it was still out there. And they can't see, so it's just, it's not safe at all.
No, and I remember seeing Gasly's car with, it was like a piece of a Rolex sign or something on his car. I mean, I remember we were at the bar, so there was a big crowd. Everybody was just in an uproar when we saw, like, what even is that? Like, it is on his, you know, at first you're like, oh, did he like mess up his front wing? But you're like, no, like that's just not right. And it was, oh man, and especially being a driver, you know, I think that's something with how far safety has come in this sport. It's sometimes easy to forget how risky it still is, especially in, you know, conditions like that.
And to make matters worse, the FIA ended up giving Gasly a 20-second time penalty and 2 penalty points like on his license.
For what?
Speeding in under a red flag condition.
How does it make it make sense? Like, what? Why?
Yeah, I was pretty shocked to read that. Given like Gasly's reaction and them actually being in the wrong, to give out a 20-second time penalty is like pretty insane. I don't think we've seen a 20-second time penalty this year.
Also, yeah, I mean, if you heard his radio, he was very emotional when he saw the tractor.
Yeah.
He was like, I could have fucking died. Like, he was... I don't even know. They were saying, like, after the race, like, no one could, like, he was inconsolable. He was very upset.
Well, and I mean, Jules was Leclerc's godfather, but Leclerc and Gasly, like, grew up together.
Right.
You know, so obviously he would have known Jules. I mean, it's a small community, like, and then you're in the exact same situation. I would lose it. I would absolutely lose it.
Yeah, it's too close to home. Like, it's literally the same track and the same conditions. That's just disturbing that no one else is thinking about that too.
Mm-hmm. And for them to react that way.
Mm-hmm. 20 seconds is insane.
Because it just seems like such of a penalty that it's almost like you need to keep your mouth shut. But that's just my point of view, I guess.
We'll see how the FIA handles too this whole budget cap situation. I feel like a lot of eyes watching them right now. All I can say is I hope that they do better in the future, because that's just unacceptable.
I don't know why they don't just have, like, I know that they have a set of rules. Why is it not interpreted the same way every time?
That would make too much sense, Catherine.
Well, I think it's kind of funny, the last couple of times we've been talking about drama, it's been like the drivers, the teams, stuff around the paddock. The theme of the week is the FIA, man.
Sticking it to the man.
Yeah.
It kind of dominated this race, even though this race was chaotic in and of itself. I think the main thing was, like, the first 3 laps, with signs going off. That was terrifying. I remember we were standing at the bar. At this point, I'm pretty sure I was on my feet because...
Oh, yeah.
we saw... it was super scary to even watch them all take off with all the spray. And then you see a Ferrari. You don't know which Ferrari it is. And then you see a Williams, and you don't know what Williams it is. And then Gasly has a sign on it. And I remember just pointing, like, turning from screen to screen to screen, and there was, like, something happening each time I turned.
Oh, I was on my feet yelling, for sure.
Well, because we couldn't figure out, like, is it Leclerc? Is it Sainz? Who is it?
It was sad, though, because the commentators were like, I'm glad it wasn't Leclerc. And I'm like, what?
I know, imagine being Sainz, listening to that back and being like, oh, so it's cool when I'm in the wall? Like,
yeah.
Fuck you guys.
Because how many DNFs is that for Sainz at this point?
Too many.
Yeah. Kind of a lot.
Well, I feel like we're already starting to get a bit in the weeds. Should we talk through qualifying before we get right into the race?
Yeah, I would say with qualifying, Q1 was probably the least surprising. Q2 was kind of interesting.
I think the only thing that was really notable in Q1 was, again, back to Gasly.
Right.
He was struggling with his brakes. I don't know exactly what was happening, but he was on the radio complaining about his brakes, continuing to have issues, and got dropped in Q1. And he was furious.
Yeah, and almost to a point that was inappropriate, because Yuki was having the same brake issues. I think what the commentators were saying, at least, is that they put new brakes on from practice to qualifying, and so it probably takes some type of wearing in to get them to a good level, just like tires. And Yuki was having that same issue, but Gasly said that he accused the team of favoring Yuki.
He made some very pointed comments, and this is right on the heels of the announcement coming out that he's officially moving to Alpine. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I remember watching it being like, whoa, okay, someone's just out for blood right now.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say it when you're in the car and don't have the context, but he really doubled down when they were interviewing him afterwards. And I don't know if he hadn't seen the footage yet, but as one of his advisors, I would have been like, look, I know you're angry, but just don't say that again. You don't want to make things... Yeah. You don't want to cause problems for yourself for the rest of the season. Like, let's not say things that you can't fully back. And plus, too, it's Yuki's home race.
Yeah.
Like, if anything, I could understand, even without the announcement, why they might have put a little bit of favoritism towards him. Just as, like, when it's any driver's home race, not that they're going to outwardly... not that they're going to do that to a point where it's ridiculous, but I can understand why they might make that call. And again, it's not proven. He was still having brake issues himself, so...
Yeah, not a good look.
Definitely not. But other than that, I don't think anything was too surprising. Nicholas Latifi did show up to the weekend with a 5-second penalty from last weekend's collision with Zhou, but he qualified P20, so not a big deal there. However, we will come back to Latifi.
Yep. Anything in Q2 of note?
Yeah, I think Q2, the big thing with Q2 is there were a lot of times on the board, and then everyone went out for their last, tried to get like a last flying lap, and it really shook up the entire grid, because Daniel was near the top for the majority of Q2 and then barely missed it. He qualified 11th. That was obviously, me watching Daniel, so... obviously why I noticed that.
Well, I did feel bad that Daniel missed out, but that did mean that my boy Seb made it through.
Oh my god.
Okay,
I'll let you have that one.
Thank you. It's been a rough couple of weeks at Aston Martin. He really needed that.
And he does really like this track. I mean, but you know, it's Daniel's last time
Daniel
racing on
likes
that
this
track
too.
Okay. You know what? The whole situation is just unfair. Daniel did not deserve to go out like this. I just want to say that for the record. I don't think I've said it on this podcast, but he deserved better. He deserved better than this.
Well, Jackie, both of our fave drivers are going out on bad notes this season, so at least we can commiserate.
At least your driver had a choice.
Okay. Anyway, moving on. Q3. Trying to be here for you.
I know. It's just hard right now. I'm still in the anger phase, okay? I haven't really accepted yet.
Fair enough. You've had a little less time. I mean, I don't think there was anything too shocking in Q3. I think we saw a couple good drives. I was actually the one who I was kind of surprised by how good they were driving was Ocon.
Yeah.
He really got up there. We saw some great times from him. I think the big thing was they were all pretty close.
Yeah.
I mean,
very, very close.
Nobody was super safe. I mean, you even said that in Q2. There were some shakeups towards the end of the session, and the times on the board were, within fractions of a second. I mean, they always are, but some tracks I feel like are closer than others, and this one, at least it felt like everyone was really close.
It was definitely interesting to see the Alpines over the Mercedes.
Yeah, that's true. That was a bit of a shakeup,
Because both Alpines did better than Russell, and then Ocon did better than Hammy. But other than that, I feel like nothing too crazy.
No, Leclerc just barely missed out on pole. Max took it home, which, I mean, the way the race ended up, it almost didn't even matter where you started because it was just such a mess at the start of the race. But I feel like we should just get into it.
Race results?
Race results. All right, so we already alluded to this, but it was a little wild on track. Again, we had 3 laps. It was red flagged, 2-hour delay. But the reason it was red flagged, we did have 2 DNFs right off the start. First was Alex Albon in the wall. Second, Carlos Sainz also in the wall. Both devastating. But once we did, get going after quite a delay, we didn't run a full race, but we ran enough of a race to award full points. And so, starting from the back in 18th place, again with a 20-second time penalty, Pierre Gasly. In 17th, Mick Schumacher. In 18th, Zhou Guanyu. In 15th, we had Valtteri Bottas. 14th, Kevin Magnussen. In 13th, at his home race, scoring no points, sadly, we had Yuki Tsunoda. I thought you were a Yuki fan.
I am, but boo. That
Boo is like she's sad.
I'm sad. It's just a whole sad part of the table here.
There has been a storm cloud over Jacqueline.
If I just had to have if you just had a section off the table, this over here is the heartbreak zone.
Usually you only boo during results when it's like Lance Stroll. Speaking of, in 12th, Lance Stroll. In 11th, another boo from Jack, Daniel Ricciardo.
Just frowning, tears silently streaming down my face.
Well, I wanted a boo. Okay, into our points positions. In 10th, we had Lando Norris. And with his first points of the season, in 9th place, Nicholas Latifi. We'll come back to that. In 8th place, George Russell. In 7th, Fernando Alonso. In 6th, scoring some fat points for Aston Martin, Sebastian Vettel.
Can points be fat?
They sure are now.
Vettel earns them.
In 5th place, we have Lewis Hamilton. In 4th place, Esteban Ocon. In 3rd place, for Ferrari, Charles Leclerc. In 2nd, Perez. And again, that was because of a penalty. And winning the race and apparently the world championship, number 1, Max Verstappen.
See how reserved I was with that celebration?
Incredibly reserved. And ladies, I think we really need to address the elephant in the room. No, I'm not talking about the world championship. I don't care. Nicholas Latifi. Goat Tiffy. Somebody else's last season in F1. Points on the board. Points for our man.
I think this is the only thing that actually put a damper on finding out that Max won the world championship is that my brother immediately texted me and just sent me shoey ? And I was like, I didn't agree to do a shoey if Max won. That would work against me. Like, why would I do that? And he's like, no, go Tiffy. Sent me a screenshot of the standings. I'm like, I don't recall this. What are you talking about? And I forgot who I was dealing with, a lawyer. So he sent me the actual receipts of the precise episode and seconds that we said we would do a shoey for Latifi if he got into the top 10.
I thought you were doing the shoey. It's just you.
Oh, it is just Catherine. You're right.
Because we already picked other drivers to do shoeys for, and we wouldn't let her pick the same ones that we did.
Okay, when she was texting us this weekend that we had to do shoeys, I totally thought it was the whole group.
Well, she just wanted us to suffer with her, but don't worry, I checked.
Wow, you were gonna let me do a fucking shoey with you when I didn't need to?
Don't worry, babe, I got you.
Hell yeah. Ride or die over here on this side of the table.
Heartbreak, so.
Well, don't worry, Jack. You still have to climb 32 flights of stairs. We haven't forgotten.
Yeah. I do need to do that.
I think that, we have some bets we need to cash in, ladies.
That we do.
Might be a betting weekend.
I feel like we need to go back and listen to our other shoeys because I feel like we might have created some other ones for us that my brother isn't so carefully tracking.
I am impressed with David's memory and also his dedication to lawyering your ass.
Yeah.
That is an older brother if I ever heard one.
So true, so true.
So that was the only thing that brought me down on my Sunday.
Yeah, I don't know if there's really a lot more to say about the race. I think we covered a lot of the drama. Oh, I will say the fans. Amazing. Some of the signage I saw.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible. There was one guy who wanted to be the Ferrari strategist, and I was like, hire him. It's better than what you got right now.
I loved him. I would hire him today. I don't need a resume. Man can make a good sign. There was tinsel on that.
Tinsel?
Arts and crafts director for sure.
Get that man in the paddock. Oh, I know what else. So, any other race comments before?
I think just the fact that we were really, really excited to go see it in person because it was airing at midnight here in Central Time. We went to the bar, we hyped it up, we invited a bunch of people to watch it with us, and then it got delayed. Bummer in terms of races to watch live, but in terms of interesting races, I mean, it was undoubtedly interesting. I just wish I watched it at a more reasonable hour.
Agreed.
Completely agreed. Well, even though it was raining on the track in Japan, it was a beautiful day for racing here in Chicago. And ladies, we finally got to do our races. How was the driving experience?
That's so true. Oh my gosh, with all the chaos, I completely forgot.
Yeah, why we were up so early that day to make it an even longer day. We got to do our first track drive.
And I can understand why people are addicted. That's all I gotta say.
3 laps is not nearly enough.
Oh no.
That's my only complaint.
I think even just like 5 would have felt good. Because by the time, it probably took me like 2 to really get comfortable in the car. Mm-hmm. I think I could have pushed that bad boy up to like 150 if I had a couple more laps.
Yeah, because you only got to go along the main straight twice. Mm-hmm. Because for the 3rd lap, you had to go off and pit. But the cars were gorgeous. And some of the best handling. I mean, I've driven a lot of rental cars before. So every time I get a new rental car, I feel like, all right, I got to get the hang of this, whatever weird noises it's going to make. Those cars, absolutely stunning.
I'm glad they told us the thing about the brakes, though. Yes. They put race brakes on the cars, and so when the cars are moving slowly, i.e. when you're pitting, the brakes are at a low enough temperature because they're meant to be run on races when they hit like 500 degrees, so they squeak. Mm-hmm. So you have these beautiful cars that you're supposed to be driving really fast, and they come into the pits and they're squeaking, and you're like, is this safe? Yeah, it turns out it is. It's actually safer, but glad they gave us a heads up.
Yes, yeah, because they did not tell us the first time we went through the safety training months ago. So that was a good extra tip for us.
That guy who did the safety training this time around was very engaging. I feel like he knew all the points to emphasize. Because obviously you're nervous when you get behind the car if you've never done like a track drive at these type of speeds. And your brain, of course, you get a little bit of nerves. And so he's really making sure that you know how to understand your instructor and like hammer the key points home in that presentation so that you stay safe out on the track. And it definitely worked. It was very effective.
Yeah, I think the man before him that did the safety instruction was using more of like a scare tactic.
Yeah.
Because he went through like how much it will cost us if you go off the track or if you like hit something. I'm like, yeah, I'm already afraid to do that. Like that I will not be doing, but
yeah, don't need to scare me even more.
Yeah.
I think the wildest thing was, okay, I mean, I may be a Ferrari fan, but this was my first time actually in a Ferrari. There was no park. I remember pulling back in the pits and I'm just staring at the guy like, what now? It was on the paddle shifting. You had to pull both the paddles, but I'm, looking in by the console, I'm looking at the dash. Yeah. And it was interesting because the Ferrari steering wheel is designed, it was different than any other steering wheel I've ever had. And I actually had to be really careful because normally where I place my hands is like where the horn buttons are. And there's one on each side of the steering wheel. And I was so scared I was going to honk the horns, which he was like, that's not a big deal. You totally can honk the horns. But, even just trying to figure out how to park it, there were so many different buttons. And I'm like, this is a fraction of the type of controls that are on an F1 Ferrari. Mm-hmm. So I think I would just be completely overwhelmed if I ever got my hands on one of those.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ready for an F1 car yet, but I could do one of those cars again.
Oh, yeah.
I will say that there's now a photo of you in one of my chats for work.
Wait, what?
What?
I hadn't heard this.
Because they requested a photo of me in my car, and then they were like, okay, well, you were in like a Lamborghini that's not as like cool as your friend in the Ferrari, and so I had to send a picture of you in your Ferrari.
That's why you wanted the picture? I thought this was a Grid Gals thing. No. Also, they make you wear race helmets, and so again, safety first, but I got some cheeks, right? And so the photo of me in this Ferrari, I'm like the helmet's like pushing on my face. I'm like the world's chubbiest cheeks, and also I'm smiling like a little kid, and so
yeah,
it's a pretty funny picture, I'm not gonna lie.
It was the one it was zoomed out to get the whole car in it.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't just the single one of you.
Cheesing with my cheeks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the team appreciated it.
Well, great. So glad I could bring joy to your coworkers' day.
Well, speaking of, if you've liked what you heard so far, feel free to visit us on gridgals.com. It has links to all of our socials, and make sure to like and subscribe anywhere you guys listen to podcasts.
And that's the checkered flag for this session. We'll see you back on the grid next week.